Poor Waitress gave shelter to 5 bikers in a storm. Next morning, 500 showed up at her cafe. The late afternoon sun hung low over Route 47, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt that stretched through the heart of Millbrook, Kansas. Sarah Mitchell wiped down the counter of the Blue Moon Café for what felt like the 100th time that day, her shoulders aching from the repetitive motion. At 32 years old, she looked older than her years, the kind of tired that settles into your bones when life keeps throwing punches and you've run out of ways to dodge them. The cafe was nearly empty, as it usually was on Thursday afternoons. Old Jim sat in his regular corner booth, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, and Martha Hendricks picked at a piece of apple pie while reading the local paper. The oscillating fan on the counter pushed warm air around the room, its rhythmic squeaking the only sound breaking the silence. Sarah glanced at the clock mounted above the kitchen pass-through. 4:30. Another hour and a half until closing. Then she'd have to rush to pick up Emma from after-school care before they charged her the late fee she couldn't afford. Again. "Sarah, hun, can I get a warm-up?" Jim called out, holding up his empty mug. "Sure thing, Jim." She grabbed the coffee pot and made her way over, the linoleum floor sticky under her worn sneakers. As she poured, Jim nodded toward the window. "Storm's coming in. Big one, according to the weather service. They're talking about it being the worst we've seen in years." Sarah followed his gaze. The sky to the west had darkened considerably, clouds rolling in like a bruised canvas, purple and grey swirling together. The wind had picked up too. She could hear it whistling through the gap under the front door. "Great," she muttered, more to herself than to Jim. "Just what we need." The last major storm had knocked out power for 3 days. She'd lost a week's worth of groceries from her fridge and had to use her already maxed-out credit card to replace them. The memory made her stomach clench. Jim studied her with kind eyes that had seen too many hard winters. "You and Emma doing okay?" Sarah forced a smile. "We're managing, always do." It was a lie, of course, but a necessary one. Jim was sweet, but she'd learned long ago that accepting charity only made her feel smaller. Ever since David left 2 years ago, walked out without so much as a goodbye, leaving behind nothing but an empty closet and 3 months of unpaid rent, she'd been fighting to keep her head above water. The cafe job barely covered rent on their tiny apartment, and her second job cleaning offices at night just about paid for Emma's daycare and groceries. There was never anything left over for emergencies, let alone dreams. The bell above the door chimed, and a gust of wind rushed in, scattering napkins from the dispenser on the counter. Sarah looked up to see Principal Anderson from Emma's elementary school, his tie loosened and his face showing the strain of a long day. "Hey, Sarah. Coffee to go, please. Black, 2 sugars." "Coming right up, Mr. Anderson." She moved behind the counter, preparing his order with practiced efficiency. "How's Emma doing in class?" "She's a bright girl," he said, and Sarah's chest swelled with pride despite everything. "Very creative. Her teacher says she's always drawing these elaborate pictures during free time, has quite an imagination." "She gets that from her father," Sarah said, then immediately regretted mentioning David. She handed over the coffee. "That'll be $2.50. Mr. Anderson paid and nodded toward the darkening sky. "You should close up early tonight. That storm's going to hit hard. They're saying possible tornadoes." After he left, Sarah stood at the window, watching the trees along Main Street bend in the strengthening wind. Debris skittered across the empty parking lot, leaves, paper, an old plastic bag. The street was already deserted, everyone with sense having gone home to batten down the hatches. She should close early. The thought tempted her, but the cafe's owner, Mr. Chen, had been clear about keeping regular hours unless absolutely necessary. He'd already docked her pay twice this month for leaving early to pick up Emma when she'd gotten sick. She couldn't afford to lose this job. The lights flickered once, twice. Jim looked up from his booth. "Power's getting ready to go," he said. "You ought to send folks home and lock up, Sarah. Ain't worth risking it." I know. She glanced at the clock again. 5:15, 45 minutes. She could make it. The bell chimed again, and this time 5 figures pushed through the door, bringing with them the smell of rain and gasoline. Bikers. Sarah recognized the type immediately. Leather vests over denim, heavy boots, weathered faces marked by years on the road. 3 men and 2 women, all of them looking road-weary and rain-spattered. The tallest of them, a man with a greying beard and eyes the color of steel, approached the counter while the others fanned out, taking in the modest cafe with assessing glances. "We're looking for shelter," he said, his voice gravelly but not unkind. "Storm caught us between towns. Your place here was the first thing we saw with lights on." Sarah hesitated. They didn't look dangerous exactly, but she'd learned to be cautious. Still, they were people, and that storm was getting worse by the minute. Through the window behind them, she could see their motorcycles lined up near the curb, already gleaming with rain. "We can pay," added one of the women, a lean figure with close-cropped black hair and kind eyes. She pulled out a wallet. "Just need somewhere to wait it out. Won't cause any trouble." "We don't have a lot of seating," Sarah said slowly, "but you're welcome to stay. Coffee's fresh. I can make some sandwiches if you're hungry." The bearded man's face softened into something approaching a smile. "That'd be real kind of you, miss. It's Sarah, and grab any table you like." As the bikers settled into 2 booths near the window, Sarah noticed the patches on their vests. The main one read, "Iron Brotherhood MC," with a location underneath. Kansas City Chapter. She'd heard of motorcycle clubs before, seen them sometimes on the highway when she made the drive to visit her mother in Topeka. Most were just regular people who liked to ride together. Outside, the sky had gone nearly black, and the first fat raindrops began to spatter against the windows. The wind howled, rattling the old panes in their frames. The lights flickered again, stayed off for a heartbeat, then came back on. "Gonna be a rough one," Jim said, finally getting up from his booth and putting $5 on the table. "I'm headed home while I still can. You take care, Sarah. You too, Jim. Drive safe." Martha followed shortly after, leaving just Sarah and the 5 bikers. The storm hit in full force moments later, a torrential downpour that turned the world outside the windows into a watercolor painting, everything blurred and running together. Thunder cracked overhead, so loud Sarah jumped. "You okay?" the woman with short hair called out. "Fine," Sarah said, trying to steady her breathing. She'd always hated storms ever since she was a little girl. "Just startles me sometimes." She busied herself making sandwiches. Ham and cheese, turkey and Swiss, whatever she could put together from the cafe's limited supplies. As she worked, she kept glancing at the clock and thinking about Emma. The after-school program would keep her safe. They had a basement for severe weather. Still, her daughter was probably scared, and Sarah wasn't there. The guilt gnawed at her, it always did. "Here you go," she said, carrying a tray of sandwiches and fresh coffee to the bikers' tables. "It's not much, but it's hot." "This is perfect," the bearded man said. Up close, Sarah could see the laugh lines around his eyes, the gentleness in his weathered face. "Thank you for taking us in. A lot of places wouldn't." "Everyone deserves shelter from a storm," Sarah said simply. One of the other men, younger with a scar across his left cheek, looked up at her. "You run this place alone?" "I'm just the waitress. Owner's Mr. Chen. He's probably at home with his family right now." "You got family?" the second woman asked. She was older than her companion, with grey threading through her dark hair and a tattoo of a phoenix visible on her forearm. "A daughter, Emma. She's 7. Sarah couldn't help smiling when she talked about her. "She's at after-school care right now. I need to pick her up after I close, but—" She gestured at the storm outside. Water was now coming down in sheets, visibility reduced to almost nothing. "That's rough," the bearded man said. "I'm Marcus, by the way. This is Lisa." He indicated the woman with short hair. "Derek, Tommy, and that's Rachel." He pointed to each in turn. "We were heading to a veterans rally in Topeka when this thing came out of nowhere." "Veterans?" Sarah asked. "Most of us," Marcus confirmed. "Marines, Army?" We ride together now, raise money for veterans' causes, visit VA hospitals, that sort of thing. That explained something about them. The bearing, the way they carried themselves with a certain discipline, even in casual settings. Sarah's grandfather had been a veteran. She remembered the same quality in him. The lights flickered again, and this time they stayed off. The cafe plunged into darkness, broken only by the frequent flashes of lightning. Sarah heard someone swear softly. "Got a flashlight?" Lisa called out. "Yeah, under the counter." Sarah fumbled her way there, feeling along the familiar path. Her fingers found the flashlight, and she clicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness. "There's a battery-powered radio, too. Let me see if I can get a weather update." She found the radio and twisted the dial until she found a local station. The announcer's voice came through, crackling with static. "Tornado warning in effect for Harper, Kingman, and Sedgwick counties until 8 p.m. Residents are urged to seek shelter immediately. Multiple funnel clouds have been spotted with one confirmed touchdown near." The signal dissolved into white noise. Sarah tried adjusting the dial, but couldn't get it back. "Well, that's not good," Tommy said from the darkness. Marcus stood up. "Sarah, this place have a basement or any kind of shelter? Just a storage room in the back. No basement. Building's too old. Storage room's better than nothing if this gets worse. You mind showing us?" Sarah led them through the kitchen to the small storage area behind it. It was cramped and cluttered with supplies, but the walls were solid concrete. Probably the safest place in the building. "If we hear a tornado, we pile in here," Marcus said. "Everybody clear on that?" The others nodded. Even in the dim light of Sarah's flashlight, she could see they were taking this seriously. It made her feel a little less afraid. They returned to the main dining area. Sarah lit a few candles she kept for emergencies, placing them on the tables. The flickering light cast dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, the storm raged on, the wind screaming around the corners of the building. "How long you worked here?" Rachel asked, trying to make conversation over the noise. "About 3 years, since my ex left." Sarah wasn't sure why she was telling them this. Maybe it was the strange intimacy of being stranded together, or maybe she was just tired of keeping everything locked inside. "It's hard work, but it's steady, and Mr. Chen's decent, even if he's strict about hours. Raising a kid on your own, that takes real strength," Lisa said. Sarah shrugged. "You do what you have to do. Emma's worth it. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, even if everything else fell apart." "What's she like?" Derek asked. He had a kind voice, incongruous with the scar on his face. "Curious, always asking questions about everything. She wants to be an artist when she grows up." Sarah found herself smiling despite the circumstances. She draws all the time, people, animals, houses with gardens. She's obsessed with gardens right now, even though we live in an apartment with no yard. Last week she drew this elaborate picture of what our dream house would look like. 3 stories, a huge garden with every flower she could think of, a tree house, even a pond with fish. "Sounds like a special kid," Marcus said. "She is." Sarah's voice caught slightly. "I just wish I could give her more. She deserves more than me scrambling to make rent every month, more than hand-me-down clothes and missed school events because I'm working. Sometimes I feel like I'm failing her." "You're not failing her," Rachel said firmly. "You're there. You're trying. That matters more than you know. My mom raised 3 of us on her own after my dad died. We didn't have much, but we had her, and that was enough. Your daughter will remember that you fought for her." The words hit Sarah harder than she expected, and she had to blink back sudden tears. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers, wasn't used to anyone seeing the struggle and acknowledging it without judgment. A particularly violent gust of wind shook the building, and something crashed outside, probably a trash can or a sign torn loose. Sarah jumped, nearly dropping her flashlight. "Easy," Marcus said. "Building solid. We're safe in here." "I hate storms," Sarah admitted. "When I was 8, a tornado hit my hometown. We survived in the basement, but our house was destroyed. I can still remember that sound, like a freight train coming right at you. I've been scared of them ever since." "Nah, fear's natural," Tommy said. He'd been quiet until now. "I'm scared of plenty of things. Took me years to admit that after I got back from Afghanistan. Everyone thinks you're supposed to be fearless, but that's bull. Fear keeps you alert, keeps you careful. It's what you do with it that matters." "What do you do with it?" Sarah asked. "Face it anyway. Not because it goes away, but because what's on the other side matters more than the fear." They sat in the candlelight, listening to the storm, and Sarah felt an odd sense of peace despite the chaos outside. These strangers had no reason to be kind to her, no obligation to share their stories or make her feel less alone, but they did it anyway. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said after a while. "Why do you ride? I mean, why motorcycles, why the club?" Marcus leaned back, considering the question. "Different reasons for different people. For me, it's freedom. Out on the road, nothing between you and the world. Everything's simplified. It's also brotherhood. We look out for each other, support each other. A lot of us came back from service and had trouble adjusting. The club gave us purpose again, a mission. We help other vets, we ride for charity, we make a difference where we can. And it pisses off our families," Derek added with a grin, "which is a bonus." The others laughed, and even Sarah found herself smiling. "You ever ride?" Lisa asked. "Never. I've always been too practical for that kind of thing, or too scared, or both." "Not too late to learn," Lisa said. "Freedom's something everyone deserves, even if you can only grab it in little pieces." Sarah thought about that. When was the last time she'd felt truly free? Before Emma was born, maybe, when she and David had dreams of traveling, of seeing the world. But those dreams had died with the relationship, buried under bills and responsibilities and the grinding weight of just surviving. The storm continued to rage, but inside the Blue Moon Café, in the flickering candlelight, 6 strangers found common ground. They talked about their lives, their struggles, their hopes. Sarah learned that Marcus had 2 grown children he'd fought hard to reconnect with after his PTSD drove them apart. Rachel had lost her husband to suicide after his 3rd tour in Iraq, and now dedicated herself to preventing other families from going through the same pain. Derek had been a teacher before he joined the military and was thinking about going back to it. Tommy raised horses on a small ranch outside Kansas City. Lisa ran a women's shelter. They were real people with real problems, not so different from her own. Somewhere around 7:30, the worst of the storm began to pass. The rain lightened, and the intervals between thunderclaps grew longer. The wind died down from a scream to a howl to a whisper. Sarah checked her watch. She'd missed pickup time for Emma by 2 hours. She'd have to pay the late fee, and Mrs. Garrison at the after-school program would give her that disappointed look, and Emma would be worried, and the guilt crashed over her in waves. "I need to call the after-school program," she said. "Let them know I'm okay, that I'll get there as soon as the roads are safe." "Phone lines are probably down," Marcus said, "but try." The cafe phone was dead, as expected. Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. Emma would be so scared. "Here." Lisa held out a cell phone. "Try mine. Sometimes they work when landlines don't." The cell phone had a weak signal, but it was enough. Sarah dialed with shaking hands, and Mrs. Garrison answered on the 3rd ring. "Blue Moon Café, is that you, Sarah?" "Yes, I'm so sorry. I got caught in the storm. I couldn't leave. Is Emma okay?" "She's fine, honey. She's worried about you, but she's safe. We've got her in the basement with the other kids who are still here. We're not going anywhere until this passes, and parents can get here safely. You take your time." Sarah's throat tightened with relief and gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you so much. Can I talk to her?" There was rustling, then Emma's small voice. "Mama? Hey, baby. I'm okay. I'm safe. I just got stuck at work because of the storm. I was scared. Mrs. Garrison said there might be tornadoes. I know, sweetie, but you're in the safest place, and I'm going to come get you just as soon as the storm is over. Can you be brave for me a little longer?" "I can be brave." Emma's voice was small but determined. "Are you really okay?" "I really am. There are some nice people here keeping me company. We're going to wait out the storm together, and then I'll be there before you know it. Okay, Mama. I love you. I love you too, baby. So much." After she hung up, Sarah realized she was crying. She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed, but no one commented on it. "She okay?" Rachel asked gently. "Yeah, she's safe. She's brave." Sarah laughed wetly. "Braver than me." "Doubt that," Marcus said. "Takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing." The power flickered back on around 8 o'clock, the light seeming almost harsh after the candlelight. Outside, the storm had reduced to a steady rain. Sarah went to the window and looked out at Main Street. Tree branches littered the road, and a traffic light was dangling from its wires, but overall the town seemed to have weathered the worst of it. "Looks like we made it through," Derek said, joining her at the window. "Yeah." Sarah turned to face the group. "Thank you. For staying calm, for being kind. You didn't have to be." "Sure we did," Marcus said. "That's what decent people do. They help each other." He pulled out his wallet. "What do we owe you for the food and the shelter?" "Nothing," Sarah said quickly. "You're not customers. You're just people who needed help." "Sarah," Lisa started. "I mean it. I'm not taking your money." She crossed her arms, stubborn. It was one of the few things she had left, her ability to be kind, to help someone else even when she had so little herself. She wasn't going to sell that. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but we owe you one. You ever need anything, you call us." He pulled a card from his wallet and handed it to her. "That's got my number and the clubhouse. I'm serious. Anything you need, you call." Sarah took the card, not really believing she'd ever use it, but touched by the gesture. "Thank you." The bikers gathered their things and prepared to leave. The rain had stopped, though water still dripped from the cafe's awning. Their motorcycles sat where they'd left them, wet but undamaged. "You be careful getting to your daughter," Rachel said, giving Sarah a quick hug. "And remember what I said. You're doing better than you think." "Take care of yourself, Sarah," Lisa added. "You've got strength in you. Don't forget that." One by one, they filed out. Sarah watched through the window as they mounted their bikes, engines roaring to life. Marcus raised a hand in farewell, and then they were gone, disappearing down the wet street into the clearing night. Sarah stood alone in the empty cafe, the card in her hand, feeling strangely bereft. For a few hours, she hadn't been alone. For a few hours, someone had seen her struggle and acknowledged it. For a few hours, she'd felt a little less invisible. She locked up the cafe, climbed into her battered Toyota, and drove carefully through the storm-damaged streets to pick up Emma. Her daughter ran to her when she arrived, throwing small arms around Sarah's waist and holding on tight. "I was scared, Mama." "I know, baby, but we're both okay now. Let's go home." As Sarah drove home through the wet streets, Emma chattering beside her about the storm and the basement and how Mrs. Garrison had let them sing songs to stay calm, she thought about the bikers and their words. Strength, courage, freedom. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. She just didn't know yet how much that strength was about to be tested, or how much her life was about to change. Sarah woke to the sound of her alarm at 5 a.m. like she did every morning. For a moment, she lay in the darkness of her bedroom, exhausted down to her bones. After picking up Emma, they'd gotten home around 9:30. She'd made Emma a quick dinner, helped her into pajamas, and read her a story until she fell asleep. Then Sarah had done 3 hours of her usual office cleaning shift, getting home just before 2 in the morning. 3 hours of sleep. She ran on 3 hours most nights. She dragged herself out of bed and into the tiny bathroom she shared with Emma, splashing cold water on her face to shock herself awake. The woman in the mirror looked back at her with hollow eyes and hair that needed cutting about 2 months ago. She tied it back in a ponytail and didn't look again. In the kitchen, she made coffee with the last of the grounds. She'd have to buy more tomorrow, which meant something else would have to wait. The math of poverty was simple and relentless. Every dollar spent here meant a dollar not spent there. Groceries or electricity? gas or Emma's school supplies, new shoes or the overdue medical bill. She made oatmeal for Emma's breakfast, counting out exactly half a cup of oats to make the canister last another week. Then she packed Emma's lunch: peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, a handful of pretzels, a juice box. Simple but sufficient. Emma emerged from the bedroom at 6, rubbing her eyes, her dark hair a tangled mess around her small face. She looked so much like David it sometimes hurt to look at her, but she had Sarah's determination in her chin, her stubbornness. "Morning, baby." "Morning, Mama." Emma climbed into her chair at their small table. "Do I have to go to school today?" "Yes, ma'am. Same as every day." "But what if there's another storm?" Sarah crossed to her daughter and knelt beside the chair, tucking a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. "There's not going to be another storm today. I checked the weather. It's going to be sunny and clear, and even if there was a storm, you'd be safe at school. They have plans for that. Mrs. Garrison kept you safe yesterday, didn't she?" "Yeah." Emma picked up her spoon and poked at her oatmeal. "You were safe too, right? With those people. Very safe. They were nice people who just needed shelter, same as me." "What were they like?" Sarah smiled, remembering. "They were bikers. You know, people who ride motorcycles. They were veterans, which means they served in the military to protect our country. They told me stories and made sure I wasn't scared during the storm. That was nice of them. It really was." After dropping Emma at school, Sarah drove to the Blue Moon Café. Main Street looked rough in the morning light. Branches everywhere, some store awnings torn, a few broken windows. She'd heard on the radio that morning that the tornado had touched down about 15 miles south of Millbrook, tearing through farmland, but miraculously missing the small towns in the area. They'd been lucky. Mr. Chen's car was already in the parking lot when she arrived. Sarah's stomach sank. He almost never came in this early. She found him in the cafe, surveying the space with a critical eye. The power was back on, but there was water damage along the eastern wall, where rain had leaked through the old windows, and one of the ceiling tiles had come loose, hanging at an angle. "Sarah." His greeting was curt. "You closed early yesterday." "The storm, Mr. Chen. I know about the storm. I also know you could have locked up at 6 and been home safely. Instead, you stayed and let people in. Bikers, I heard." Sarah's mouth went dry. "They needed shelter. There were tornado warnings. I couldn't just turn them away. This is a business, not a charity." Mr. Chen's face was impassive. "I've told you before about following procedures. No unauthorized closures, no unauthorized guests." "They weren't guests. They were people caught in a storm." Sarah felt her temper rising, fueled by exhaustion and stress. "What was I supposed to do? Send them back out into a tornado? You were supposed to close on time and go home to your daughter." That hit harder than Sarah wanted to admit, because part of her agreed with him. She should have been with Emma. But she also knew she couldn't have lived with herself if she'd turned those people away. "Is this about the bikers, or about me staying late?" she asked quietly. Mr. Chen sighed, and for a moment he looked less like a stern boss and more like a tired middle-aged man with his own problems. "It's about you not following the rules, Sarah. I like you. You're a good worker, but I can't have employees who don't follow procedures. This is your 3rd warning this month." "Third?" Sarah's heart hammered. "Mr. Chen, please. You left early twice to get your daughter when she was sick. That's 2. This is 3. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go." The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah grabbed the counter to steady herself, her mind spinning. "You're firing me, but I need this job. I can't afford to lose this job. I'll pay you through the end of the week and give you a reference, but I need someone reliable, Sarah, someone who follows the rules." "I am reliable. I've never missed a shift except when Emma was sick, and what mother wouldn't." "I'm not arguing about this. My decision is final." Mr. Chen pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Your pay through tomorrow, plus a week's severance. I'm sorry it has to be this way." Sarah took the envelope with shaking hands. She wanted to argue more, to plead, to explain that this job was the thin line between making it and complete disaster. But she could see the resolve in Mr. Chen's face. He'd made up his mind. "I need you to leave now," he said, not unkindly. "I'll mail your last paycheck to your address on file." Sarah walked out of the Blue Moon Café in a daze. She sat in her car for a long time, staring at the envelope in her hands, doing the math. With this money, she could cover this month's rent. But that was it. She had one other cleaning job that paid almost nothing. It wouldn't be enough. Even if she found another waitressing job immediately, and jobs were scarce in Millbrook, she'd be behind on bills, unable to pay for daycare, unable to buy groceries. The panic started as a flutter in her chest and built into a wave. She couldn't breathe. Her vision swam. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and tried to remember what her therapist had told her about anxiety attacks before she'd had to stop going because she couldn't afford the copay. Breathe, count, ground yourself. 1. She could feel the steering wheel against her skin. 2. She could hear birds singing somewhere nearby. 3. She could smell the air freshener dangling from her rearview mirror. 4. She could taste the bitter coffee on her tongue. 5. She could see the blue of the sky through her windshield. Slowly the panic receded, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion and a sense of defeat that made her want to curl up and never move again. But she couldn't do that. She had Emma. Sarah drove to the library, where she could use the internet for free, and spent the next 3 hours applying for every job she could find. Waitressing, retail, cleaning, anything. Most didn't bother to respond. 2 sent automated rejections. One wanted her to come in for an interview next week, which was better than nothing, but didn't solve her immediate problem. Around noon, she drove back to the cafe, parking across the street. She wasn't sure why she came back. Maybe some part of her hoped Mr. Chen had changed his mind, or maybe she just needed to sit with the loss for a moment. She sat there for maybe 10 minutes before she noticed something strange. Motorcycles. A lot of motorcycles. They were coming down Main Street in groups of 5 or 10, the rumble of their engines audible, even through her closed windows. And they were all parking near the Blue Moon Café. Sarah watched in confusion as more and more bikes arrived. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They lined both sides of Main Street, filled the parking lots, spilled onto side streets. Bikers in leather vests dismounted and stood in groups, talking and gesturing toward the café. What was going on? She got out of her car and crossed the street, moving through the crowd of bikers. There had to be at least 300 of them now, maybe more, and they kept coming. The noise was incredible. Not just the motorcycle engines, but the sound of hundreds of conversations, laughter, greetings being called out. Through the cafe window, she could see Mr. Chen looking out with an expression of complete bewilderment. Sarah pushed through to the front door just as it opened, and Marcus stepped out. He still wore his leather vest, but in daylight she could see more details. The various patches and pins, the American flag on one shoulder, the POW MIA emblem on the other. "Sarah!" His face lit up when he saw her. "We were hoping you'd be here." "What is this? What's happening?" "This," Marcus said, gesturing to the sea of motorcycles and leather-clad riders, "is us paying back a debt. You sheltered 5 of us last night, so we brought 500 to patronize your cafe this morning. We figured that's fair." Sarah stared at him, not quite processing the words. 500? Well, 497 to be exact. Few folks couldn't make it, but close enough. Marcus grinned. "We made some calls last night, put the word out through the veteran biker community. Everyone who could make it came. We've got clubs here from 3 states, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Kansas. All of us, ready to buy breakfast, lunch, coffee, whatever your cafe's got. But I don't work here anymore." The words came out flat. "Mr. Chen fired me this morning." Marcus's expression darkened. "He what?" "Because I stayed to help you guys last night. He said I should have closed on time and sent you back out into the storm." Sarah laughed, a hollow sound. So I lost my job for doing what any decent person would do. Marcus turned to look back at the cafe, where Mr. Chen had emerged and was standing on the sidewalk, clearly overwhelmed by the crowd. Then Marcus called out to the assembled bikers in a voice that carried over the noise. "Listen up! The owner of this cafe fired the woman who sheltered us last night. Fired her for being kind, for being decent, for not turning people away in a storm. What do we think about that?" A wave of angry murmuring rippled through the crowd. Sarah saw faces harden, arms cross. The mood shifted from celebratory to something harder, more dangerous. "Now hold on," Mr. Chen said, his voice thin and nervous. That's exactly what happened," a woman's voice called out. Sarah turned to see Lisa making her way through the crowd. "We were there. Sarah gave us shelter, fed us, refused payment. She's good people, and you fired her for it." "I fired her for not following procedures," Mr. Chen said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was looking at the sea of leather and chrome surrounding his cafe, and Sarah could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. 500 potential customers, or one waitress. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said, his tone brooking no argument. "You're going to give Sarah her job back with a raise, and you're going to apologize, and then, only then, will we patronize this establishment. Otherwise, we'll find somewhere else to spend our money. And we'll make sure everyone knows why." Sarah wanted to protest, to say they didn't need to do this, but the words stuck in her throat. Because the truth was, she did need this. She needed the job, needed the security, needed someone to fight for her for once. Mr. Chen looked from Marcus to the crowd to Sarah, the silence stretched out, taut as a wire. "Fine," he finally said. "Sarah, you can have your job back, and I'm sorry, I was too harsh." "And the raise?" Lisa prompted. $2 more per hour, Mr. Chen said, though he looked like each word physically pained him. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. $2 an hour was enormous, an extra $80 a week, over $300 a month. That was groceries. That was the buffer she'd never had. That was the difference between drowning and staying afloat. "Thank you," she managed. Marcus smiled. "Now then, who's hungry?" The roar that went up from the crowd was deafening. Bikers surged toward the cafe, and Mr. Chen's eyes went wide with panic. "I can't handle this many people," he said. "I don't have enough supplies, enough staff." "Then you'd better get Sarah in there helping," Marcus said, "and maybe call in some extra hands." For the next 7 hours, Sarah worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. Mr. Chen called in his wife and 2 nephews to help cook and bus tables. They ran out of coffee twice, out of eggs once, and had to send someone to the grocery store for emergency supplies 3 times. Sarah's feet ached, her back screamed, and she was pretty sure she'd taken more orders that day than she had in the previous month combined. But the bikers were patient and kind. They tipped generously, 20, 30, sometimes 50%. They told her stories about their own lives, their struggles, their victories. Many of them were veterans like Marcus's group. Others were teachers, nurses, mechanics, accountants who rode on weekends. They were people from all walks of life, united by a love of riding and a code that said, "You help those who help you." A woman named Diane from the Oklahoma City chapter pressed a $100 bill into Sarah's hand and wouldn't take no for an answer. "For your little girl," she said. "Buy her something fun." A man named Jack from St. Louis told Sarah about his own single-parent childhood, how his mother had worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. "You remind me of her," he said. "She was strong like you. I didn't appreciate it enough at the time, but I do now. Your daughter will too." By 7 p.m., when the last of the bikers finally left, Sarah could barely stand. Mr. Chen's cash register had never seen numbers like this. He looked stunned, almost dazed. "I've never had a day like this," he said. "Never in 20 years of running this cafe." "Maybe you should be nicer to your employees," his wife said pointedly, giving him a look that promised further discussion later. Sarah counted her tips with shaking hands. $750. More money than she usually made in 2 weeks, just in tips, combined with her wages and the severance Mr. Chen had given her. She had enough to catch up on bills, to buy Emma new shoes and school supplies, to maybe even start a tiny emergency fund. She thought about crying, but was too exhausted for tears. Marcus had waited, one of the last to leave. He approached her as she was wiping down tables, her body moving on autopilot. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know. I think so." Sarah set down her rag and looked at him. "Why did you do this? You didn't owe me anything." "Yes, we did. You helped us when you didn't have to. That matters." Marcus pulled out a card, different from the one he'd given her yesterday. "This is for a local veterans organization we support. They help people in crisis, vets, but also families of vets, and people in the community who need assistance. You need anything else, job help, food assistance, whatever you call them. They're good people." Sarah took the card, though she wasn't sure she'd ever have the courage to use it. She'd spent so long being self-sufficient. Asking for help felt like admitting defeat. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. I don't know how to repay." "You don't repay kindness, Sarah. You pass it on. When you get the chance, you help someone else. That's how it works." After Marcus left, Sarah finished closing the cafe and drove to pick up Emma. Her daughter ran to her, full of excited chatter about her day. They'd had an assembly, she'd played with her best friend Jessica at recess. Her teacher had praised her artwork. "Mama, you look tired," Emma said, studying her with those too wise eyes children sometimes have. "I'm tired, baby, but it's good tired. It was a very good day." That night, after putting Emma to bed, Sarah sat at their kitchen table and looked at the money spread before her. She thought about the bikers, about Marcus's words, about the way hundreds of strangers had shown up to support her without even knowing her. She thought about debt and gratitude and the web of human connection that she'd spent so long trying to deny, telling herself she didn't need anyone, that she could do it all alone. But maybe being alone wasn't strength. Maybe accepting help, accepting community, accepting that sometimes people wanted to support you, maybe that was strength too. Sarah picked up the card Marcus had given her, the one for the Veterans Organization, and set it carefully on her refrigerator under a magnet, just in case, just as a reminder that she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. Then she went to bed, and for the first time in months slept without the weight of terror pressing on her chest. Tomorrow was a new day, and for once she actually believed things might get better. The story should have ended there. A feel-good moment, a community coming together, a struggling woman getting the help she needed. But life rarely wraps up that neatly, and the events at the Blue Moon Café on that storm-tossed Thursday night and chaotic Friday morning had set something in motion that nobody could have predicted. Sarah learned about it on Saturday afternoon when her phone rang, an unfamiliar number with a Kansas City area code. "Hello? Is this Sarah Mitchell?" A woman's voice, professional but warm. "Yes, this is she. My name is Jennifer Torres. I'm a reporter with Kansas City News Channel 7. I'm calling about the incident with the bikers at the Blue Moon Café. We'd like to interview you for a human interest story." Sarah's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, what?" "One of the bikers posted about what happened on social media, and it's gone viral. Hundreds of thousands of views. People are really responding to your story. The waitress who helped strangers in a storm and got fired for it, then got her job back when the biker community rallied. It's a beautiful story of community and kindness. We'd love to feature you on our evening news." I don't know. I'm not good with cameras or interviews or... We'd keep it simple. Just a few questions. And it could really help draw positive attention to issues like wage security and community support. Not to mention, it would be great publicity for the cafe. Sarah thought about Mr. Chen, about the way his face had looked when those 500 bikers showed up. "Let me think about it and call you back?" "Of course. No pressure. But just so you know, this story has really captured people's imagination. You did something kind, and people want to know more about you. After hanging up, Sarah stared at her phone in disbelief. Viral? She didn't even have social media. The idea that thousands of people were reading about her, talking about her, felt surreal and vaguely terrifying. But when she called Marcus to ask his advice, his number was saved in her phone now. He laughed. Yeah, Derek posted about it. Didn't think it'd blow up like this, but I guess people need good news. Up to you if you want to do the interview, but I'd say go for it. Might help you in the long run, getting your name out there in a positive way. Plus it'll bring more business to the cafe, which means more hours for you, right? He had a point. And maybe, Sarah thought, maybe sharing her story could help other people in similar situations feel less alone. She called Jennifer Torres back and agreed to the interview. The news crew showed up on Monday morning, transforming the quiet cafe into a hive of activity. They set up lights and cameras while Sarah fidgeted with her apron, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Emma was at school, thank God. Her daughter didn't need to see her mother this nervous. Jennifer Torres turned out to be in her mid-30s, with kind eyes and a manner that put Sarah somewhat at ease. Just tell me what happened in your own words, she said after they'd done a few test shots. Start from the beginning. So Sarah did. She talked about the storm, about the 5 bikers who'd needed shelter, about making the decision to let them in despite being alone and somewhat nervous. She talked about the kindness they'd shown her, the conversations they'd had. She talked about Mr. Chen firing her the next morning and the shock of seeing hundreds of motorcycles rolling into town. Why did you help them? Jennifer asked. You were alone. You had your own worries. You could have turned them away. Sarah thought about that. Because everyone deserves shelter from a storm. Because I'd want someone to help me if I needed it. Because... She paused, searching for the right words. Because kindness isn't conditional. You don't help people only when it's convenient or safe or profitable. You help people because it's the right thing to do. And now your story has inspired thousands of people. How does that feel? Honestly, overwhelming. I didn't do anything special. I just did what anyone should do. But not everyone does, Jennifer said gently. That's what makes it special. The segment aired that evening. Sarah watched it at home with Emma, who was thrilled to see her mother on television. Mama, you're famous, Emma bounced on the couch. You're on TV. I'm not famous, baby. It's just a news story. But Emma's assessment turned out to be closer to the truth than Sarah wanted to admit. The story from Kansas City News Channel 7 was picked up by affiliates across the region, then by national outlets. By Wednesday, Sarah's story had been featured on Good Morning America. A national magazine wanted to do a feature. A publisher called about turning her story into a book. The cafe was flooded with customers. Locals who wanted to support Sarah, tourists who'd seen the news and made detours to Millbrook, reporters still chasing the story. Mr. Chen had to hire 2 additional servers and extend hours. I never thought I'd say this, he told Sarah during a rare quiet moment. But I was wrong to fire you. You're good for business. And more than that, you're a good person. My wife has reminded me of this approximately 1,000 times. Sarah would have felt vindicated if she wasn't so exhausted. The attention was relentless. People recognized her on the street. Her phone rang constantly. Emma's school had to implement extra security because reporters kept showing up trying to get photos. It all came to a head on Friday, exactly 1 week after the bikers had shown up, when Sarah got a call from a lawyer named Michael Chen. No relation to her boss, he assured her with a laugh. Ms. Mitchell, I represent a group of investors who are interested in helping you. They've been following your story and are impressed by your character and work ethic. They'd like to offer you an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Sarah asked warily. She'd learned to be suspicious of offers that seemed too good to be true. They want to help you start your own cafe, a place where you'd be the owner, not just an employee. They're willing to provide startup capital, business training and support. The only condition is that you maintain the same spirit of community and kindness that made your story resonate with so many people." Sarah felt dizzy. "I don't understand. Why would they do that?" "Because they believe in investing in people who make their communities better. And because your story has shown you're exactly that kind of person. Are you interested in hearing more?" Sarah's first instinct was to say no, to retreat back into the safety of her small life with its predictable struggles. But then she thought about Emma, about the dreams they'd never been able to pursue, about the drawing of the dream house with its garden and pond. "Yes," she heard herself say, "I'm interested." The meeting was set for the following week in Kansas City. In the meantime, Sarah tried to process everything that had happened. Her life had changed so dramatically in just 10 days that she sometimes felt like she was living someone else's story. On Sunday, Marcus called to check in. "How you holding up?" he asked. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "It's all so much. The attention, the offers, people acting like I'm some kind of hero when I just let some people stay dry during a storm." "You did more than that, Sarah. You showed kindness when it would have been easier not to. You opened your door to strangers. In a world where people are scared and suspicious, where everyone's looking out only for themselves, that matters. It matters more than you know. I got a job offer. Or not a job exactly. Investors who want to help me open my own cafe." "That's incredible. You're going to take it?" "I don't know. It feels too big, too risky. What if I fail? What if I let everyone down?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You know what I learned in the Marines. Fear of failure keeps more people trapped than actual failure ever could. Sure, you might fail, but you might also succeed. And even if you do fail, you'll have tried. You'll have taken the shot. That's worth something all by itself." "When did you become a motivational speaker?" Sarah asked, trying to lighten the mood. "I've always been this wise. You just never asked before." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Look, whatever you decide, you've got people in your corner. The Brotherhood doesn't forget its own. And as far as we're concerned, you're family now. You need anything you call." After they hung up, Sarah sat on her small balcony and watched the sun set over Millbrook. Emma was inside, drawing at the kitchen table. Another elaborate house with an even bigger garden. Her daughter's dreams were still so pure, so untainted by the reality of bills and struggle. What kind of example was she setting? If she turned down the opportunity out of fear, what message would that send to Emma? That dreams were for other people, that you should play it safe, accept your lot, never reach for more. But if she took the risk and failed, what then? She could lose everything, end up worse off than before. Sarah thought about the bikers, about the way they'd shown up for her without hesitation. She thought about the thousands of people who'd reached out with messages of support, many of them sharing their own stories of struggle and survival. She thought about Jennifer Torres saying, "Kindness isn't conditional." Maybe courage wasn't either. Maybe you didn't wait until you felt brave to take the leap. Maybe you just jumped and figured out the flying on the way down. Sarah pulled out her phone and called the lawyer back. "Mr. Chen, this is Sarah Mitchell. I've thought about your offer, and I'd like to hear more. When can we meet?" She could hear the smile in his voice. "How about Tuesday morning? I'll send you the address." That night, Sarah told Emma about the offer. She tried to explain it in 7-year-old terms. Someone wanted to help them open their own restaurant where they could make the rules and create something special. "Like my dream house?" Emma asked, eyes wide. "But a restaurant?" "Kind of like that, yeah." "Will it have a garden?" Sarah laughed. "I don't know, baby. Maybe. Would you like that?" "I'd like that a lot." Emma went back to her drawing, then looked up again. "Mama, are you scared?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "A little bit. Why?" "Because you look scared, but also excited, like when we go on the big slide at the park." Out of the mouths of babes. "That's exactly how I feel, baby. Scared and excited at the same time." "That's okay," Emma said with the certainty only children possess. "You're brave. You can do scary things." Sarah pulled her daughter close, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. "You think so?" "I know so. You're the bravest mama in the world." On Tuesday morning, Sarah drove to Kansas City with Emma. She'd taken the day off, and Emma was out of school for a teacher planning day. The city felt overwhelming after Millbrook's quiet streets, but she navigated to the address Michael Chen had sent her. The office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. Sarah felt out of place in her best dress, which was really just a department store clearance find from 3 years ago. But Emma held her hand tightly, and that gave her courage. Michael Chen met them in the lobby. He was younger than Sarah expected, maybe 40, with an easy smile and a casual confidence that came from success. "Ms. Mitchell, and this must be Emma. Welcome." He led them to a conference room where 3 other people waited. They introduced themselves, 2 women and a man, all successful business owners who'd started a fund for helping entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. "We've been looking for the right person to support," one of the women, Karen, explained. "Someone with the character and drive to build something meaningful. When we saw your story, we knew you were who we'd been looking for." They laid out the terms. They'd provide $50,000 in startup capital, along with business mentorship, accounting support, and connections to suppliers and contractors. In return, they'd take a small equity stake in the Café, enough to ensure they were invested in her success, but not so much that she'd lose control. "The goal isn't to make money off you," the man, Robert, explained. "It's to help you build something sustainable that benefits your community. If this cafe succeeds, it'll employ people, feed people, become a gathering place. That's worth more than any financial return." Sarah listened to them talk about business plans and market analysis and profit margins, her head spinning. But underneath the jargon, she understood what they were really offering: a chance. A real chance to build something better. "I need to be honest," she said when they asked if she had questions. "I don't have business experience. I've never run anything bigger than my own household budget. I'm not educated. I barely finished high school because I had to start working. I'm going to make mistakes." "Of course you will," Karen said. "Everyone does. But you have something more important than education or experience. You have integrity. You have compassion. You understand what your community needs because you're part of it. That's what makes you the right person for this." "What happens if I fail?" Sarah asked. "If the cafe doesn't work?" "Then you'll have tried," Michael said, "and you'll have learned. And we'll figure out next steps together. This isn't a loan, Sarah. You're not going to be buried in debt if things don't work out. We're taking the financial risk here, not you." Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Mama, can I draw while you talk?" They provided her with paper and crayons, and Emma settled into a corner of the conference room, happily sketching, while the adults continued discussing details. Sarah found herself agreeing to things that terrified her: business training courses, meetings with contractors, decisions about location and menu and hiring. "There's one more thing," Robert said near the end of the meeting. He pulled out a folder. "We've been in contact with Marcus and the Iron Brotherhood MC. They've offered to help with the build-out, painting, basic construction, whatever you need. They want to be part of this." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "They've already done so much. They believe in you. So do we. The question is, do you believe in yourself?" Sarah looked at Emma, drawing away in the corner, lost in her own creative world. She thought about all the sacrifices she'd made, all the dreams she'd deferred, all the times she'd settled for less because she didn't think she deserved more. Maybe it was time to stop settling. "Yes," she said firmly, "I believe I can do this." The smile that spread across Michael's face was genuine and warm. "Then let's get started." The next 3 months were the most challenging and exhilarating of Sarah's life. She worked her shifts at the Blue Moon Café. Mr. Chen had been surprisingly supportive of her plans, even offering advice based on his own years in the business, while spending every other waking moment on her new venture. She named it Emma's Garden Café, after her daughter's love of gardens and growing things. The location was in downtown Millbrook, a vacant storefront that had once been a hardware store. It needed work, a lot of work, but Sarah could see the potential. True to their word, Marcus and the Iron Brotherhood showed up on the first Saturday to help with demolition and cleanup. But they didn't come alone. Word had spread through the biker community, and Sarah counted at least 70 people who showed up with tools, eager to help. "We tear things down, we build them up," Marcus told her, surveying the space with a critical eye. "This is the fun part." They ripped out old shelving and fixtures, tore up damaged flooring, repaired walls. The women of the motorcycle clubs organized food and drinks, making sure everyone was fed. Children played in the parking lot, under watchful eyes. It felt less like work and more like a community celebration. Emma was in heaven, carefully painting a corner that would eventually become a children's play area. Sarah had decided the cafe would be family-friendly, a place where parents could bring kids without feeling stressed. There would be books and games and, yes, a small indoor garden where children could learn about growing herbs and vegetables. "You're really doing this," Lisa said, taking a break from painting to stand beside Sarah. "I'm proud of you." "I'm terrified," Sarah admitted. "What if nobody comes? What if I've made a huge mistake?" "Then you'll figure it out, but I don't think that's going to happen. You're creating something this town needs, a place that feels like home, that welcomes everyone. That matters." The business training courses were harder than Sarah anticipated. She'd never been good at school, and suddenly she was learning about inventory management, food costs, employee scheduling, health codes, and a dozen other things that made her head spin. But she persisted, staying up late after Emma went to bed, reading and studying and making notes. Karen, one of the investors, became a mentor and friend. She'd call Sarah once a week to check in, answer questions, provide encouragement. "You're doing great," she told Sarah after a particularly frustrating session on financial projections. "I know it feels overwhelming, but you're learning fast. Trust the process." "I feel like I'm drowning in information." "That's normal. But here's the secret. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know enough to make good decisions and be smart enough to ask for help when you need it. And you're doing both." The menu development was actually fun. Sarah had been cooking on a tight budget for years, learning how to make simple ingredients into satisfying meals. Now she got to think creatively about food. What would appeal to families? What could be prepared efficiently? What showcased local ingredients? She decided on a concept: comfort food with a twist. Classic diner favorites done well but with unexpected touches. Pancakes with locally sourced blueberries and handmade syrup. Burgers with brioche buns from a nearby bakery. A rotating selection of homemade soups. Nothing fancy, nothing pretentious, just good food made with care. The local farmers' market became her testing ground. She'd make samples and hand them out, getting feedback, adjusting recipes. The community embraced her, offering suggestions and support. Mr. Henderson, who ran an organic farm just outside town, offered to supply her with fresh produce at cost. "You helped my son when he came home from Iraq," he said. "He was one of those bikers who showed up that day, said you made him feel human again, gave him coffee and listened to his stories. That meant the world to him. This is me paying it forward." Sarah protested that it was too much, but Mr. Henderson was firm. "You're building something good here. We all benefit when our community has places like this. Let me help." Everywhere she turned, people wanted to contribute. The local hardware store gave her a discount on supplies. A retired contractor volunteered to supervise the build-out. A graphic designer created her logo for free, a simple, beautiful design featuring a coffee cup with flowers growing out of it. "Why is everyone being so nice?" Sarah asked Marcus one evening. They were sitting outside the cafe, taking a break from painting. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Because kindness is contagious," Marcus said. "You started something when you opened your door that night. You showed people that helping each other matters. Now they want to be part of that. They want to believe that community still means something. I'm just one person. Yeah, but one person can start a ripple that becomes a wave. You did that. Now you're just riding it out. Emma thrived through all of this. She loved being part of the cafe's creation, offering opinions on colors and decorations. Sarah had given her a small corner of responsibility, the children's area, and Emma took it seriously, choosing books from the library to stock the shelves, picking out games that she thought other kids would enjoy. "This is our cafe, Mama," she said one night. "We're building it together." Sarah hugged her daughter close. "We really are, baby." The transformation of the space took longer than planned. Construction always does. But finally, 3.5 months after that fateful storm, Emma's garden cafe was ready to open. The night before the opening, Sarah walked through the space alone. It was beautiful in ways she'd never imagined. The walls were painted a warm cream color, with accent walls in soft green. Local artists had contributed paintings and photographs. The children's corner was cozy and inviting, with cushions and books, and Emma's small indoor garden already sprouting basil and cilantro. The kitchen was efficient and well-equipped. The dining area could seat 50 people comfortably, with a mix of tables and booths. It looked like a real restaurant, like a place people would actually want to come. Sarah stood at the counter, running her hand over the smooth surface, and felt tears start to flow. Happy tears, overwhelmed tears, grateful tears. A year ago, she'd been barely surviving, working herself to exhaustion just to make rent, convinced that her life would never be anything more than a constant struggle. Now she owned a cafe. She had investors who believed in her. She had a community that supported her. She had a daughter who was proud of her. She thought about the 5 bikers who'd stumbled into the Blue Moon Cafe during a storm, seeking shelter. She thought about how easily she could have turned them away, how that single decision to help strangers had changed the entire trajectory of her life. "You did good," a voice said from behind her. Sarah turned to find Marcus standing in the doorway. "I thought everyone had gone home. Wanted to check on you before the big day. You ready?" "No." Sarah laughed through her tears. "Absolutely not. I'm terrified." "Good. Means you care." Marcus walked over and looked around the space. "This is special, Sarah. You built something real here, something that matters." "We built it. I couldn't have done this without you, without the brotherhood, without everyone who helped. We provided labor and support. You provided the vision and the heart. Don't sell yourself short." Marcus handed her a small wrapped package. "Opening gift. Don't open it now. Wait until after your first successful service tomorrow." "Marcus, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. Now get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a big day." Opening day dawned clear and bright. Sarah had barely slept, her mind racing with last-minute details and worst-case scenarios. But when she arrived at the cafe at 5:30 a.m., her new team was arriving at 6. She felt a strange calm settle over her. This was it. This was everything she'd worked for. Her staff arrived right on time. 3 servers she'd hired from the community, all of them eager and hard-working. 2 cooks who'd worked in restaurants before and knew their way around a kitchen, and Emma, who'd begged to help, and who Sarah had given the official title of Junior Greeter. They ran through everything one more time: orders, timing, procedures. At 8 a.m., Sarah unlocked the front door and officially opened Emma's Garden Cafe. The first customers were already waiting, an elderly couple who'd read about the cafe in the local paper. "We wanted to be first," the woman said. "We believe in what you're doing here." They ordered coffee and pancakes, and Sarah served them herself, her hands only slightly shaking. The pancakes were perfect, fluffy and golden, topped with fresh blueberries and that handmade syrup. The couple praised every bite. More customers trickled in through the morning. Some were locals Sarah recognized. Others were from nearby towns who'd heard the story and wanted to support her. By noon, every table was full, and there was a wait for seating. Sarah worked the floor, greeting customers, checking on meals, making sure everyone felt welcome. Emma stood at the door with her official greeter badge, giving every child who entered a flower sticker and showing them the children's corner. The bikers showed up around 1 p.m. Not 500 this time, but about 50, including Marcus and his core group. They took up a large section of the dining area, ordering food and drinks and generally being wonderful customers. "This is incredible," Lisa said when Sarah came to check on their table. "You really did it." "We really did it," Sarah corrected. "This wouldn't exist without all of you." "Maybe not," Marcus agreed. "But you're the one who had the courage to build it. That's all you." By the time they closed at 8 p.m., Sarah had decided on reasonable hours that would let her still have time with Emma. They'd served over 200 customers. The cash register was full, the comment book was filled with praise, and her staff was exhausted but happy. "We did it," Sarah told them. "First day was a success. Thank you all for your hard work." After everyone left and Emma had fallen asleep on a bench, too tired to even make it to the car, Sarah opened Marcus's gift. Inside was a framed photograph she'd never seen before. It showed her from that night during the storm, lit by candlelight, serving coffee to the bikers. Someone must have taken it when she wasn't looking. But what struck her wasn't the image itself. It was the expression on her face. Even exhausted and worried, she looked strong, kind, capable. She looked like someone who could build something beautiful. Tucked behind the photo was a note in Marcus's handwriting. "Sarah, you asked me once why we helped you. Here's the real answer. We saw in you what you didn't see in yourself. We saw someone worth fighting for, worth believing in. We saw the person you're becoming in this photo. Don't ever forget that you're stronger than you know. And whatever happens next, you've got a family in the Brotherhood. Always. Marcus." Sarah set the frame on the counter in a place of honor where she'd see it every day. A reminder of where she'd come from, of the people who'd believed in her, of the strength she'd discovered in herself. 3 months later, Emma's garden cafe was thriving. Sarah had hired 2 more staff members to keep up with demand. She'd started a program where unsold food went to the local homeless shelter. She'd created a pay-it-forward board where customers could buy a meal for someone in need. The cafe had become exactly what she'd hoped, a community gathering place, a spot where everyone felt welcome, where kindness was the default setting. She still worked hard, probably too hard, but it was different now. She was building something, not just surviving. She had purpose and pride and possibility. On a Saturday in early spring, Sarah stood in the cafe watching Emma help a younger child plant seeds in the indoor garden. Her daughter was explaining seriously about water and sunlight and how you had to be patient for things to grow. "Just like Mama," Emma said. "She planted this cafe and took care of it, and now look how big it is." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. The bell over the door chimed, and a young woman came in, looking uncertain and tired. She had a child with her, a boy about Emma's age, and Sarah recognized the exhaustion in her face, the worry in her eyes. She recognized it because she'd worn that same expression for years. "Welcome to Emma's Garden Cafe," Sarah said warmly. "First time here?" "Yes. I saw the article about you online, about how you started over. I'm in a similar situation, single parent, barely making it. I just wanted to see what you'd built, to know if it was really possible." Sarah understood what she was really asking. Is there hope? Can it get better? "It's possible," Sarah said firmly. "It's hard and it's scary, and some days you'll want to give up. But it's possible. Come on, sit down. Coffee's on me, and I want to hear your story." As she poured coffee and listened to this stranger share her struggles, Sarah thought about that storm-tossed night 9 months ago. She thought about the decision to open her door, to offer shelter, to be kind when it would have been easier not to be. She'd thought she was just helping 5 people get out of the rain. She hadn't known she was changing her entire life. Marcus had been right. Kindness was contagious. You help someone, they help someone else, and the ripples spread outward in ways you can never predict. You can't control the storm, but you can decide to open your door. You can decide to believe that things can get better. You can decide to build something beautiful out of the broken pieces. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the people you help will turn around and help you build dreams you didn't even know you were allowed to have. It gets better, Sarah told the young woman. I promise you, it gets better, and you don't have to do it alone. Outside, spring rain began to fall, gentle and steady. But inside Emma's garden cafe, it was warm and bright and full of hope. The storm had passed, the garden was growing, and Sarah Mitchell, the poor waitress who gave shelter to 5 bikers in a storm, had found her way home.